Okay, next we have the toe stance. Okay, so as opposed to the horse stance where both legs were bent, now we have the front leg bent and the back leg straight. So again, as with most wushu stances, the stances are wide and deep. So we're going to squat down on the front leg is bent, and the back leg is straight. Okay? An easy way to get into this position, if you've ever been to the gym and you do lunges, it is exactly the same position with the front leg. Okay? So if I do a lunge, the front leg is bent, and the back leg, since I want that to be flat, I'm going to take my heel and bring it down to the ground towards my own body. Okay? This is the gongbu, or the bow stance. Alright? So, a couple things about the bow stance. When we go down, okay, if you can do a deep bow stance where the thigh is parallel to the ground just like the horse stance, that's perfect for competition standards, okay? But if you do not have the endurance to do this, that's okay. You can just squat as high or as low as you naturally can in your natural range of motion. In fact, as before, for general martial arts purposes, it's not necessary to go all the way down. It's athletic, and it works the quadriceps, but again, not necessary to feel the alignment. In fact, if you stand higher, it's easier to feel the alignment. Okay? So, what do I mean by alignment? The knee of the front foot should not be over the toes, just as we talked about when we're doing any of these flat-footed squats for stability and strength. Rather, we want either the knee over the instep, which is the top of the foot, or the ankle. Now, personally, I try not to teach the bow stance where the knee can be over the instep. The reason for this is my personal preference, which is that I feel that this allows for room of error, where people can sometimes let their knee go forward, and then inevitably, they may pick up a habit of having the knee go over the toes. Okay? What this does, again, is that it puts unnecessary pressure, stress, and weight on the knee, which, again, for flat feet stance, for stability and strength, it just is going to injure our knee in the long term. Okay? My first wushu coach talked about when he was teaching Tai Chi Chuan. He said that he had students complain about having knee problems when they practice Tai Chi, and he said that right away, one of the first places he knew where to look was the bow stance, and seeing where their front knee was. Was it over the toes, or was it in the right alignment? If it was over the toes, he knew this is where you're causing knee problems. You're causing undue stress, pressure, and weight on the knee, and this is what we want to avoid for not just correct alignment, but for our own health. Okay? So, the toes of the front foot should either be generally straight or even hooked a little bit inward. In fact, we prefer this because if we do the opposite and have the toes face out, if we have our hips square as we are trying to do with the bow stance where it's facing forward, you can see that we result in knee valgalization. And again, this is where the knee misaligns with the toes, and this is conducive to an ACL tear. What we want to do instead is the opposite. We want the toes to either be facing generally forward or inwards, and we want to focus on having the knee open out when we squat. What this does is it creates torque in the joint. So if you ever focus on doing a lunge or any sort of forward stepping motion where you're bearing weight on one leg more than the other, as you are with a bow stance, if you ever experience any knee issues or knee problems, it's generally because the knee is not in a secure position where we are keeping it in a tight, stable position. If we just let the knee go wherever and just relax, what happens is we're allowing that knee to have slack or wiggle room. So here on the outside is our ACL. If we allow this joint to have slack or wiggle room, that ligament is just jiggling around, and we're allowing that wiggle room to shear the joint, and it's just not good. We don't want that. Okay, so if you can imagine, if I pull on my shirt, and my shirt was the ligament attached to my joint or my skeleton, right? And I have all this wiggle room, it's all loose and relaxed, it would be very easy to tear, especially if I put it under abrupt or violent stress. Instead, I want to create torque when I squat. So if I twist my shirt, I create torque. Now, this is in a much more stable position. It's tighter, it's much stronger. I am much less likely to tear it because it is in a stronger, less relaxed position for the joint. So again, when we imagine if you have any movement where you're loading any weight more on one leg in front, for example, you're walking up the stairs, when you go up the step, you want to focus on keeping your toes generally forward and focus on turning your knee out. This is going to create that torque. This is what you want for a strong knee position when you squat. All right? Another reason why we want to avoid having the knee over the toes. So Kyle, can you come up here, please? Can you please demonstrate the closed hand posture? Yes, please. So, let's say he does it wrong. Let's say he has the knees over the toes. No, please don't do the balance. I don't want you to hurt yourself, okay? If his knee is over his toes, not only is this hurting his knee, but his structure is off as well. So if I pull him, he cannot maintain his weight, his balance, okay? When we squat, we want to squat behind our front leg, meaning that we're not leaning forward on our front leg, but we're squatting behind our front leg, and our back leg is just a tripod to support us. Okay, so you will feel more weight on your front leg. Now, for the back foot, we do not want the back foot to be too oblique. So for example, if he does it wrong and it's forming a perpendicular angle with his front foot, what happens is that your hips are too open as opposed to having your hips square for a bow stance as we want. And what happens here is we result in duck feet. And as before, when we have duck feet, when we squat down, especially abruptly, we're naturally not stable. We're going to be on our heels, which is again not necessarily a bad thing, but when we have duck feet, your feet are simply not in a position to have your toes grip the ground and balance yourself. So, especially in a position where you want to face square forward that way, as you see, you want to have the foot hooked inwards. It's okay for the foot to be oblique, but not too oblique. If it's too oblique, again, your hips are open, your force and your power generation is scattered. You have no focus in your stance. By hooking the foot in at least 45 degrees, his hips are more square and he has much more stability in his structure. So what I mean by structure is the alignment of his skeleton. So for example, if his foot were oblique and I push, now this time when I manipulate him, he cannot maintain his balance. If he wants to still keep his intention and his energy forward, he must hook his foot in. And if he holds it, he will be able to hold my weight and my force. Okay? It's not magic. It's just simple body mechanics and physics. Okay? All right, thank you.